how did you guys get into the
Well,
storage?
Anderson, actually, for 15 or 20 years, I was a top-ranked international male escort.
Most fans remember Storage Wars as a fun, high-energy show filled with lucky finds, big personalities, and sudden riches. It looked like a dream scenario, everyday people stepping into abandoned storage units and walking out with life-changing money. But behind the excitement and TV magic, something far darker was happening. Fame came fast, money followed briefly, and then, almost without warning, everything started to fall apart. For some cast members, the spotlight didn't just fade. It exposed weaknesses, magnified personal struggles, and accelerated downfalls no one saw coming. Today, we're uncovering the real stories of Storage Wars, cast members who lost everything after fame, and why their rise was never meant to last. So what really happened when the cameras stopped rolling? When fame changed the game. When Storage Wars first aired, it transformed a niche business into mainstream entertainment almost overnight. Auction buyers who had spent years quietly hustling suddenly found themselves turned into television personalities. For many of them, this attention felt surreal. One day they were competing with local buyers in dusty parking lots, and the next they were being recognized in public, invited to interviews, and followed by cameras wherever they went. At first, the fame seemed harmless, exciting even. Increased visibility meant more business opportunities, brand deals, and higher bids at auctions. But it also changed the very environment that had once made them successful. Storage auctions stopped being quiet, strategic affairs, and became chaotic public events. New buyers flooded in, hoping to replicate what they saw on TV, driving prices higher and profits lower. For cast members who built their careers on experience and patience, this sudden shift created intense pressure. They were no longer just buyers, they were performers. Every bid, every reaction, every decision had to be entertaining. Mistakes weren't just costly financially, they became permanent, replayed on television, and discussed online. Behind the scenes, the stress began to build. Some cast members admitted later that they felt trapped by their on-screen personas. They were expected to behave a certain way, even when it no longer reflected who they were. And while the show made storage buying look wildly profitable, the reality was far less glamorous. The costs were rising, competition was fierce, and the pressure to maintain an image was exhausting. As fame grew, so did expectations, and not everyone was prepared for the toll it would take. Was this newfound success actually the beginning of the end? Money came fast, but left quietly. One of the biggest myths surrounding Storage Wars is the idea that its stars became instant millionaires. While some cast members did earn significant income during the show's peak, the money rarely lasted. Television fame is unpredictable, and for many, financial planning took a back seat to enjoying sudden success. Expenses grew quickly. Bigger homes, new cars, business expansions, and lifestyle upgrades became the norm. At the same time, the storage auction business itself became less profitable due to increased competition and inflated prices. What once provided steady income now delivered unpredictable returns. Some cast members relied heavily on the show's income, assuming it would continue indefinitely. But reality television contracts are temporary, and storylines change fast. When screen time decreased or contracts weren't renewed, the financial cushion vanished almost overnight. Without the show's exposure, side ventures struggled. Merchandise sales slowed. Personal appearances dried up. And for those who had structured their lives around the assumption of continued fame, the adjustment was brutal. Bills remained, but the income didn't. Worse still, public perception didn't match reality. Fans assumed these former stars were still wealthy, still successful, still living comfortably. In truth, Some were quietly downsizing, selling assets, or dealing with mounting debt, far from the image they once projected on screen. And as the money disappeared, deeper personal issues began to surface. Because when success fades, it leaves behind one terrifying question: who are you when the fame is gone? When personal struggles became public collapses. As the money slowed and the spotlight dimmed, many Storage Wars cast members were forced to confront problems they had managed to hide while fame protected them. Stress, exhaustion, and constant scrutiny created cracks that were impossible to ignore. What once felt like a fun television opportunity slowly became a pressure cooker, magnifying every personal weakness. Some cast members struggled with the sudden loss of routine. Filming schedules had given structure to their lives, and when that disappeared, so did stability. Days that were once packed with auctions, shoots, and appearances became long and empty. For people used to constant momentum, the silence was unbearable. Mental health challenges that had gone unnoticed during the show's peak began to surface. Anxiety over finances, fear of irrelevance, and the crushing realization that fame is temporary hit hard. A few former stars admitted later that they felt forgotten almost immediately, as if years of popularity had vanished overnight. Public judgment only made things worse. Social media turned into a harsh reminder of what they once had. Fans questioned their decisions, mocked their failures, or demanded explanations they weren't emotionally prepared to give. Every misstep felt permanent, because it played out in front of an audience that had once cheered for them. For some, relationships suffered. Fame had already strained families and friendships, but financial stress pushed those bonds even further. Marriages broke under pressure, partnerships dissolved, and trust eroded as money problems intensified. The support systems that might have helped them recover were often already damaged. And while viewers remembered the confidence and bravado shown on TV, behind closed doors, many of these former stars were dealing with isolation, regret, and a haunting question they never expected to face. What happens when the version of yourself the world loved no longer exists? From fan favorites to forgotten names. Perhaps the most painful part of losing everything wasn't the money. It was the loss of identity. Storage Wars didn't just make these people famous. It defined them. Catchphrases, personalities, and on-screen roles became inseparable from who they were. When the show moved on, so did the audience. Attempts to reinvent themselves often fell flat. Without the platform of television, starting new businesses or personal brands proved far more difficult than expected. Former cast members discovered that fame doesn't always transfer, and success outside reality TV requires a completely different skill set. Some tried returning to storage auctions quietly, hoping to rebuild the way they started. But the environment had changed. They were no longer anonymous buyers. They were recognized, judged, and sometimes resented. Competing buyers assumed they were wealthy, driving prices higher, or refusing to work with them, making it even harder to turn a profit. Others stepped away from the industry entirely, taking regular jobs or downsizing their lives dramatically. The contrast was shocking. People who once appeared on national television now lived modestly, sometimes struggling just to stay afloat. Yet few spoke openly about it, choosing silence over public embarrassment. The harsh reality is that reality TV doesn't offer long-term security. When networks move on, they rarely look back. For the Storage Wars cast members who lost everything, the end didn't come with a dramatic finale. It came quietly, one missed opportunity at a time. And as fans continue to re-watch old episodes, laughing at familiar faces and iconic moments, one unsettling truth remains unanswered. How many other stories fell apart when the cameras stopped rolling? The cast members who lost it all behind the scenes. While Storage Wars made its stars look unstoppable, the truth behind the scenes was far less glamorous. Several cast members found themselves spending money faster than it came in, believing the show's success would last forever. Expensive homes, luxury cars, and risky business investments quickly became financial traps when the checks stopped arriving. Some former cast members admitted they didn't fully understand how unpredictable reality TV income could be. Episodes aired out of order, contracts changed, and appearances were never guaranteed. One bad season or creative shift could end everything overnight. When that happened, savings were already gone. Legal troubles also played a role in several downfalls. Lawsuits, contract disputes, and tax problems followed some cast members long after the cameras stopped rolling. What fans never saw were the hours spent in courtrooms, the mounting legal bills, and the stress of fighting battles they never anticipated when fame first arrived. Others faced health issues that drained both finances and emotional strength. Medical expenses piled up, especially for those without proper insurance once television income disappeared. The physical toll of stress, combined with aging and exhaustion, made recovery even harder. Perhaps the most tragic element was how quietly these struggles unfolded. There were no headlines, no dramatic announcements, just slow declines that went unnoticed, while fans continued binge-watching old episodes, unaware of what was happening in real life. And this raises a difficult question that many viewers never consider. How many Storage Wars stars were already falling apart while they were still smiling on camera? FAME-EGO and the dangerous illusion of control. One of the most overlooked reasons so many Storage Wars cast members lost everything was ego. Fame changes how people see risk. When crowds cheer your name and producers build episodes around your personality, it becomes easy to believe you're untouchable. Several former cast members made decisions they would never have considered before television. Bigger bids, riskier purchases, and blind confidence replaced caution. On-screen bravado slowly leaked into real life, and mistakes that could once be shrugged off now carried devastating consequences. The illusion of control was powerful. Many believed they could always bounce back the way they did on the show. But without editors, producers, and a guaranteed audience, reality hit hard. Real auctions don't come with dramatic music or perfect outcomes, and real life doesn't reset for the next episode. Some cast members later admitted they ignored warning signs because admitting failure felt worse than continuing to gamble. Pride kept them from asking for help. By the time reality set in, debts were too deep and options were limited. Fame didn't just disappear, it turned against them. The same recognition that once opened doors now made it harder to escape mistakes. Every failure felt amplified. Every struggle felt public, even when no one was watching anymore. And that leads to an uncomfortable but important question. Was fame the opportunity that made them, or the trap that destroyed them? The quiet struggle to rebuild from nothing. Not every Storage Wars cast member gave up after losing everything. Some tried, quietly and painfully, to rebuild their lives from the ground up. But starting over after public failure is far harder than most people realize. These former stars had to face something deeply humbling, becoming ordinary again, applying for jobs, explaining gaps in employment, convincing people they were more than just a reality TV personality. For some, it was the first time in years they had to prove themselves without fame as a shortcut. The emotional toll was immense. Former cast members have described feeling embarrassed to ask for help, even when they desperately needed it. Pride kept them silent. Admitting failure felt like betraying the image fans once loved. So they suffered quietly, hoping time would erase the past. Family relationships were often strained during this period. Spouses and children who once enjoyed the benefits of fame now had to adapt to financial uncertainty. Tension grew, trust was tested. In some cases, relationships didn't survive the pressure. What fans rarely see is how long recovery really takes. Years can pass before stability returns, if it ever does. And even then, the scars remain. Fame doesn't disappear cleanly. It leaves behind expectations, regrets, and memories that are hard to escape. Which raises a powerful question: is rebuilding after fame harder than building success in the first place? Why some cast members vanished completely. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of Storage Wars is how some cast members didn't just fade, they disappeared entirely. No interviews, no social media presence, no updates, just silence. For some, stepping away was a conscious decision. They wanted peace, privacy, a chance to live without judgment or expectations. Fame had taken enough, and they chose to walk away completely, rather than fight to stay relevant. For others, the disappearance was less voluntary. Legal issues, health struggles, and personal crises pushed them out of public view. Staying visible would have meant confronting rumors and scrutiny they simply couldn't handle anymore. Fans often assume silence means everything is fine, but in reality, silence can hide deep pain. Some former cast members are still dealing with the consequences of decisions made during their time on the show. Others are simply trying to survive day by day, far away from the world that once celebrated them. The truth is uncomfortable. Not every story gets a comeback. Not every downfall ends with redemption. Some people disappear because they have no other choice. And that leaves one final chilling question. How many Storage Wars stars are struggling right now, while the world assumes they're doing just fine? The psychological cost of reality TV fame. By the time many Storage Wars cast members realized how deeply the show had changed them, it was already too late. Fame didn't just alter their finances or public image, it reshaped how they saw themselves. Psychologists have long warned that sudden fame can distort identity, and Storage Wars became a perfect example of that reality. On the show, personalities were amplified. Confidence turned into bravado. Aggression became entertainment. Producers encouraged conflict because drama kept ratings high. Over time, cast members weren't just playing exaggerated versions of themselves, they were living them. And when the cameras stopped, those personas didn't simply vanish. Former cast members have admitted that it became difficult to separate who they were on screen from who they were off it. They felt pressure to always be on, even in real life. Simple moments, shopping, eating out, spending time with family, were suddenly filtered through the lens of how fans might see them. Privacy became a distant memory. When that attention disappeared, it created an emotional vacuum. The adrenaline rush of bidding, the applause of fans, the validation of being recognized, all of it was gone. What remained was silence, and silence for many was unbearable. Anxiety crept in. Depression followed. Some struggled with anger, others with deep loneliness. The hardest part was feeling forgotten. Fame convinces you that you matter. Losing it makes you question whether you ever did. For people whose self-worth became tied to public attention, the fall was devastating. Therapy helped some. Others refused help, believing they should be strong enough to handle it alone. So the question becomes painfully clear. Was the success of Storage Wars worth the emotional damage it left behind? Why fame made failure more painful? Failure is hard for anyone, but failing publicly, after being celebrated by millions, is something else entirely. For Storage Wars cast members, Every setback felt amplified by the knowledge that fans were watching, judging, and speculating. When businesses closed or investments failed, it wasn't just a private loss. It became gossip. Online forums dissected every rumor. Comment sections filled with cruel assumptions. Some fans turned harsh, accusing cast members of wasting their opportunity or deserving their downfall. This public pressure made it nearly impossible to grieve losses in a healthy way. Instead of processing mistakes, many cast members went into survival mode. They hid struggles. They pretended everything was fine. They smiled for the cameras even when their lives were unraveling behind the scenes. The irony is that fame magnified their failures more than it ever amplified their success. When they were winning, viewers cheered. When they struggled, the same viewers moved on. The support was conditional and fleeting. Some former cast members have admitted they would have preferred quiet failure over public collapse. At least then, they could have rebuilt without judgment. But reality TV doesn't allow quiet endings. Once you're known, you're always known, whether you want to be or not. That raises an uncomfortable question. Does reality TV reward people, or simply use them until there's nothing left? The legacy of storage wars and the price of entertainment. Looking back, Storage Wars remains wildly successful. Reruns still air. New fans continue to discover the show. From the outside, it looks like a harmless treasure hunt filled with big personalities and lucky finds. But the real legacy is far more complicated. Behind the entertainment were real people whose lives were permanently altered. Some found opportunity and stability. Others lost everything, financially, emotionally, and personally. The show didn't destroy them on purpose, but it didn't protect them either. Reality television thrives on the illusion that anyone can win big overnight, but Storage Wars proves that quick success often comes with hidden costs. Fame without preparation, money without guidance, attention without support. When the spotlight fades, those costs become painfully clear. The stories of cast members who lost everything serve as a warning, not about storage auctions, but about the fragile nature of fame itself. Success gained quickly can disappear just as fast, leaving behind consequences few are prepared to face. So the final question lingers. If you were offered instant fame, knowing what it might take from you, would you still say yes? Storage Wars entertained millions, but its hidden stories tell a deeper truth about fame, ambition, and loss. Behind every on-screen victory was a human being navigating pressure, expectation, and uncertainty. Some survived the fall, others didn't, and many are still quietly rebuilding their lives today. If this story made you see reality TV differently, take a moment to reflect on the people behind the entertainment.